Endless is an instrument, but it's also a place. It's a virtual place where you can come and play this instrument. And it's an instrument that's designed not for perfection, but it's designed to keep you in a forward motion of creativity, whether you decide to be creative alone or whether you decide to be creative together with other people. At its centre is a workflow derived from the workflow that I spent, I guess, the best part of a decade or two refining as an artist, as a musician who wanted to play and improvise and be communicative and conversational. It's hard to find a point where it all started, actually. You know, it's a journey that had lots of milestones along the way, but, you know, it was never anything planned. You know, they're kind of moments of inspiration, I suppose. When I was 4, I was sent home from school with a letter saying, "Does your son want to play the violin?" I was just like, yeah, I want to play the violin. It felt like putting my hand on a string, putting my hand with a bow in it on a string and moving it was probably the best shot I had at really expressing myself, and not necessarily through language. Abstract sound in an embodied form was like, that was how I was going to communicate with the world. I guess I had quite a sheltered upbringing, and particularly musically. You know, my parents were mostly into classical music, and that, I mean, I think, you know, they had some Beatles records and maybe the odd Simon and Garfunkel record. When I was 12, and that was kind of early 90s, all these bootleg rave tapes were around. A friend of mine's older brother lent me this tape. I was absolutely mind blown. Yeah, I think I kind of knew that I had to do something with this sound world, and I wasn't really clear what. Well, I was super naive about what this music was and how it was made. The way I understood it was through the lens of playing the violin. I'm just like, well, people must be playing this music. And then I got my second rave tape, and they're all playing the same music. I was just like, and then I realised that, you know, it was all DJs playing records that other people had made in the studio. I think I always kind of harboured the fantasy of how I naively thought electronic music was made. I got the shittest turntables money could buy. I had no idea about, like, buying records, and I didn't realise that actually that the whole art of DJing is selection and timing and curation. The whole idea of DJing was not what I wanted to do. I wanted to get my hands in there with the tracks and be, you know, I wanted to be that. My school had a recording studio, which they foolishly let me into. They had this like 8-track reel-to-reel tape machine and this big mixer with all this parametric EQ. They had like an effects unit, but like the oboe teacher had an SCI Pro 1. There was a live room there as well, so there's like a drum kit, and you could, had like patch bays on the wall, and you could patch stuff into the mixing desk. And so I'd go and then run around into the live room, play the same drum beat badly for 6 minutes, and then start like basically dub mixing, like routing things through the filter of the SCI Pro 1. And then sometimes I'd get like some Casio keyboards from the classroom, and then try and like basically like beat mix the Casio keyboards in with stuff. I felt like such an idiot. I wanted to sound like all this kind of like really heavily sequenced music and really polished sort of progressive house like Sasha and Digweed stuff. And I was just, doing a shit job of that with the equipment that was available. For my 18th birthday, my entire extended family clubbed in together to help me get a sampler. And then, I got an Atari with a Tata, and I got this basically blah, 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 sequencing, blah, blah, blah. The thing, like, at the time, that was the really exciting thing. It's like, wow, I can make things all 16th and on the grid. And then I got a PC, and then I got Cubase, and then I got bored with Cubase, and then I got Pro Tools, and then I started getting to micro editing. And then the time I spent to make a track went from like 1 day to 2 days to 1 week to 2 weeks to 4 weeks to like just losing my absolute marbles and, you know, chasing my tail over perfection. My first contact with, I guess, programming with computers was this free CD that came on the front of Future Music magazine, I think, and it had a demo of this software called Sync Modular, which was basically a digital modular. So you had these modules you could drag in, and then you could connect them up with wires. And I absolutely loved it because it gave me the sort of creative freedom I just really yearned for. This, you know, to be able to actually start to design my own effects and instruments, etc. It was like $49 or something. You could get an upgrade that would allow you to import samples into it, and that's what I wanted to do because I wanted to mangle samples. Anyway, turns out a few months later, Native Instruments actually bought Sync Modular and gave everybody who'd bought a license for Sync Modular a license for Reactor. I started messing around in Reactor, building little instruments, learning how to put stuff together, really. And it just evolved and evolved and evolved. I started getting really quite deep into it. And there's something I'd always wanted to do. So, you know, when I was DJing, I just wanted to be able to like mess around with the tracks, sort of reorder stuff and remix stuff live, not just beat mixing, fading stuff in together. And it sort of reminded me of, I remember when I was like 14, 15, got really into jungle. I used to like sit in the back of class, you know, sort of daydreaming and tapping out jungle breaks, like, you know, sort of like mashups on my fingers. Just I was just like, it must be possible to make something where you could load up a sample like an amen break and just allow you to actually, you know, mash stuff up, you know, with your fingers. And then I was like, right, okay, I want to start putting together some kind of live set.
Okay, well, this is my live mashup rave centre, comprising of laptop, dope for raver work with 24 faders, custom painted by yours truly. That one doesn't do anything. This, the keen-eyed amongst you will realise is a called Chaos Pad, but I've kind of butchered it a bit, but it's now works as a crossfader with assignable bits.
And then I went to Sonar 2003. I caught Jamie Lidell's live performance there with Pablo Fiasco. I'd never seen live looping. I think I'd heard of like looper pedals, but I thought it was just a sort of one-man band thing. And then I saw Jamie doing it, and he was rerouting stuff and re-looping stuff and playing synths in it. It was very electronic, but it was also very live and chaotic, and it was just so vivid. I'd never seen electronic music being that vivid. He was clearly in conversation with the audience. He was in conversation with his equipment. The whole thing was this real kind of like feedback network. That was a blueprint, or it certainly shone a light for like the way forward. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna figure out a way to add live looping to this kind of like 2-track DJ mixing thing. So I then put in this kind of like looper thing. So on the second channel, you could kind of like switch it to like a mic input, and then you could kind of freeze the mic input and then like mash the mic input. And this was like super, super fun. So I then want to be able to like mash that up again through more stuff. So I built this kind of like re-looping things, keeping on kind of iteratively reprocessing, 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 reprocessing. And then I got in touch with Native Instruments and said, look, I've been building a bunch of stuff with Reactor. They just kind of flew me out there. We don't quite understand what you're doing, but it sounds really cool. Went in, took this flight case. Do you know what? I'm going to get... It's kind of gutted. So I had this big bank of faders in there, laptop on there. So I took this box down to the native HQ and showed it to Stefan Schmidt, who was basically the guy who made Reactor. And I was just, mashing up these breaks and just doing stuff like super quickly. And Stefan was just like, this is why we made Reactor. So you could do stuff like this. I just kept on modding that Reactor ensemble, adding features, and then eventually it just became impossible. So that's when I started building the flow machine. I'd done a lot of improvising, so I knew like the ways that you could end up in checkmate musically, and I knew all the things that annoyed me that were like inherent problems to improvising and like just free-flowing electronic music creation. I kind of spent 2 or 3 years building lots of different prototypes and trying out lots of different ways of kind of building like a really flexible system for improvisation, and that basically became the flow machine. A bit long in the tooth. This has seen better days. It's been on more aeroplanes than a lifetime's carbon footprint would allow, really. Mic, and then I just need to plug everything in. I was thinking maybe while we're rolling and recording, it'd be good just to do some like ambient, some more ambient stuff. Yep. There are a number of things that I didn't want to do. These checkmates I didn't want to get into. Like, I didn't want to run out of channels. I want to find a way to bounce things down and not... Because, if you can have 32 channels, but you wouldn't be able to control them all. If I wanted to play some drums, I just want to play some drums now. I don't want to have to go to the channel that the drums are on, or I don't have to make a channel to put the drums on. I want to play the drums. And when I finish playing the drums, I want to loop the drums, like the good bit, not the shit bit. And not to have 2 attempts at it. And the first one was really good, but I wasn't recording, so I'm going to have to do it again. It's all about engineering out every single thing that gets in the way with this kind of forward creative motion. The whole thing with signing to Warp, it was incredible. But I think as soon as I'd done it, I kind of felt it was also the pinnacle of my kind of narcissism as well. I realised that my vision for that was just to be on Warp. That whole world of spending, deep diving and spending, weeks, second guessing and third guessing and polishing and micro editing and tweaking. I felt that whole world pushed me into being the kind of person I didn't really want to be. it's so perfectionist. And it really played into my kind of narcissistic tendencies. 2009 was a big year. So the Warp album came out. I toured relentless. I did like 150 shows that year. And I also released my first plugin with Native Instruments, the Finger. You know, by the time I got to the end of the year, I was a husk of a man. I knew that my time was up and I was doing the wrong thing. I'd made a bunch of music and a bunch of records, but I also made tools to help other people make music. And so, you know, that first plugin came out, the Finger, and it just felt the whole process just happened so effortlessly. I programmed the entire thing in 6 weeks, and it was a real success. It was just like, okay, this is what I'm supposed to be doing. To make that transition from making my creativity about glorification of me into turning my creativity, I guess, into a platform for other people to be creative.
This is the mouth. Last time I showed you the finger, but now it's time for harmony.
I always wanted to turn the flow machine into a thing that people could have. Often when I was doing these improvised shows, I felt like I was having the most fun in the room. And actually, the real potential here was not me playing this thing. It was like me making this thing available to other people. I knew at that point, it's just like, okay, there's no way I'm going to do what I want to do by building plugins. It needs to be an entire, system built from scratch. I set up a forum in like 2011 or something. This Ash character showed up on the forum and seemed to be like incredibly knowledgeable about Reactor. So I was just like, let's meet up. I'd love to chat more about this. So I went to go and visit him down in Portsmouth and was there for like an hour or so, chatting about loads of stuff. And then at the end, his mate was in the room and said, and Ash was like, yeah, so basically I totally rebuilt your software from scratch just by watching your videos. And then he showed me this mental deck thing, which is like the pre-flow machine instrument. He built the entire Reactor ensemble like himself from scratch just by like watching videos of my performances, like listening to recordings. I was just like, okay, we've got to do something together. So yeah, Ash and I started working together on prototypes around 2015, and that's when this whole like riff history thing came in. The flow machine didn't used to have a riff history. You'd keep on moving forward, you couldn't browse back in time. And that's one of the things I wanted to like be able to just keep this sort of breadcrumb trail of everything that changed that you could kind of browse back through. We'd come together every week or so, and like we'd sit next to each other, and he'd have his like Ableton push with his riff history, and I'd have my Ableton push with my riff history. I'm just like, I really want to be able to listen to your riff history, and I really want to be able to like send you things from my riff history. And then it was a bit like, maybe we need to build a cloud-connected riff history looper thing. Ash and I spent a year kind of just prototyping stuff. Beginning of 2016, we started building the code base in C++. The original idea was to build a desktop app first. So we kind of built a versatile backend that you could plug anything into, like MIDI controllers, OSC, touch interfaces. I think that, the potential of iOS, the potential of iPhones, iPads, and and Android as well is huge. But I think the difficulty is more the way people think about it. Ash very, very quickly put together a prototype of the app with all the sort of basic functionality in, and it was so quick to use. It really encapsulates everything that the flow machine was for, really. And it was, it was in the palm of your hand. People who've been making music for years don't really think of, iPhones and iPads as serious things to make music on. And they really are. So we launched the app in March 2020, right in the middle of the first wave of the COVID pandemic, Endless is one of the perfect sort of alone together tools that you can fire up the app and you land there on the homepage and there's a bunch of people jamming. There's a flow, a constant flow of music happening 24 hours a day, which is really, it's quite magical. Just a few months after the app launched in the App Store, we ran a Kickstarter campaign to build Endless Studio, which is the desktop version of Endless. We've already got a version of Endless Studio running. It feels like it's kind of joined up the link to the Flow machine. You know, I can map it to lots of MIDI controllers and I can have that kind of gestural, dexterous feeling. It still, to this day, kind of blows my mind. You know, I'll be playing something on Endless Studio and just forget about it. Go home, take out my phone. Yeah, there's all the stuff I was making. You know, it's there in seconds. It's there, and you can pick it up, take it away. It's kind of, it is a different world of music making, and it's a world of music making that's about doing. That's what Endless is here for, really. It's to reframe music as something we do, rather than just a product we consume alone. It sort of feels now like we just made a door. You know, the community went through that door and built a world. And it's quite magical seeing and hearing what's happening. I feel, I guess, quite humbled to be a part of, you know, to have made something that has been the touch paper for new relationships and new music, and seeing that actually become a real thing is, wow, yeah, it's humbling and cool.